All right, hello. So I ordered the Bestop fender liners and fender flares. I spoke with Bestop. They were not 100% sure if the larger shock that's in the Mojaves and the hydraulic line that goes to the reservoir would be an issue or not. So they asked me to kind of video and tape and find out if it is compatible with all modes of the Gladiator and for those that have, you know, the bigger shocks, etc. So we'll stay tuned and we'll find out. So here we are. Here's the Bestop unboxed. There's the Bestop B. Looks like it's pretty solid construction. Wiring harness. The has a 50 amp fuse for the LEDs.
50 watt, not 50 amp.
Headlight for the driving light. It'll be interesting to see if those act as a turn signal or not. And it has the driving lights right there. All right, so this is what the boxing is for the fender liners. Just keep in mind, this is going to be a lot lighter than the fender flares. The fender flares are made of steel gauge, and these are aluminum gauge. So these are going to be much lighter. I'm thinking that the Mopar shocks, or the Fox shocks, are going to be fine, because this is a rather large cutout for the shock and where the shock plates will go, or the shock mounts will go through. I also have the Apex 8-inch Auto Links disconnects. There you can see shameless plug to Terraflex. Even though they have not sponsored me, these are all, everything that's on Cookie Monster I have built. I have zero sponsorship, so everything I show is just showing you their stuff and my unbiased rating, because at the end of the day, hey, I'm not getting paid to give them a rating, positive or negative anyway. I'm just giving you my honest feedback. But that cutout that I was just depicting should clear the shock and the springs, but it'll be interesting to see if it clears the auto links or if I'm going to have to make some modifications to the auto links, but stay tuned. All right, here is the passenger side. This is the side that we're going to be working on today, just to do a dry fit before, once again, taking this out to go get powder coated. So interesting bend angles, and once again it's aluminum, so it should take a beating. I'm really tempted to, well, if these were set screws, this would be a nice design feature that I would probably recommend to Bestop, that in the future they make these little set screws so that you can customize that, but it's okay. We'll figure something out on that. That may be a blue accent or an orange accent when I get this repowder coated. We'll see when we get there. All right, stay tuned. All right, as they show in most videos, right, you have, at least for the Mojave and I think the other trims too, it's one hole there, one hole there, one hole way deep in there. There's a push pin right there towards the very front, and then you have one right there. So now I'm gonna hopefully it'll do exactly what they say, and I'll just be able to do a slight tug and this comes right off. All right, so there is actually a fifth one, and I'm guessing it's for the Mojaves and Rubicons, but there's one more right towards the very front, just so you know. All right, so it's off. It is pretty simple to take this off. A lot of people get scared. I was even scared, I'm not gonna lie. When I was pulling on these things snap. The older it gets, the more brittle it gets, so just be aware. All right, so these are on there still, and I was trying to use a trim tool to pop them off, but they just broke, and then I realized, hey, you know what, other than the one that's right there in the corner, you can pretty much just reach back here, pinch those, and pull them out without breaking anything else. So that's what I'm going to do next, and that's what I would highly recommend. All right, in the instructions it has for the front, the picture doesn't really do it well, but at the end of the day, what they're trying to say is these points that were previously the clips will mount into these pieces right here, but the very front one, this one, goes where that push pin that you took out when you removed the fender, which is right there. The illustration is somewhat horrible in my opinion. It doesn't depict it very well. It just says front of Jeep. So I don't know about y'all, but that depiction does not clearly show right there. What they should do is maybe show the right hand front bump stop or rubber grommet, whatever the case may be. But this is where they're meaning to install the little push clip that's right here. Hope this helps. All right, so for those that are wondering if the Bestop inner fender liners will work with the Mojave, the answer is yeah. It looks like it is not going to have an issue with the bigger shock or the reservoir line. It's well below the end point for the inner fender liner. And so if you are a little bit hesitant on getting the Bestop to fit your Mojave, you don't need to. It looks like it's going to fit and not be an issue. I'll be adding the fender flares next and before taking them to powder coat, but looks like it fits without a problem. All right, we're about ready to go ahead and put the fender flare onto the Cookie Monster Mojave. When you're doing the Bestop fender liners with the fender flares, keynote, you can go ahead and screw that little screw and that little screw. You can't really see it that well because of the camera, that one right there. You can screw them in to test fit them or fit them, but when you start installing the fender flare, you're going to need to remove them. And that's where we are at this point. We're about ready to go. It will be interesting to see how we're able to connect to the actual wiring harness. I haven't gotten that far, but I'm doing this just as the instructions go, so it'll be interesting to see how they do it. All right, so Bestop, per their instructions, it states that you get the bolts in the nuts and then you put them in to the various areas. And even the picture shows the Bestop inner fender flare inside. Well, here's the problem with this illustration and with these instructions. This is the inner liner that we had removed and reseated. Here's where that back plate is that you have to put in per the instructions. And then here is the top piece for this fender liner. Well, they're saying that you should put the bolt here and then the nut in. But as you can tell, look, I mean, my fingers aren't that big, but there's not really a whole lot of room to get this in here. So I'm gonna have to take off the Bestop inner fender liner, which is not a big deal, just to be able to mount this screw, or the nut and bolt here, and nut and bolt here, and the nut and bolt that's right here. So I think the instructions are a little bit backwards in my opinion. I don't think you have enough room. So we're gonna remove the fender liner again, just so we can put this in. More feedback later. Use an open end box end, an open end wrench, not an open end box end, because you won't be able to get that out. Use an open end wrench. Push the nut against the metal when sliding it up, and then ease it to the hole where you can see it. At which point you can get this in and start the screwing process, threading it in. All right, so here is the fender flare, Bestop fender flare with the fender liner. Not too bad. The only thing I'm not 100% sure of, I'm gonna probably have to get some zip tie or some glue and hold these up a little bit. Initially, we wanted to put them behind the fender flare, but as you can tell from the very top, that's pretty snug. We might be able to fish them behind this bracket, but even then, it's pretty tight for 3 lines going into one space. We'll see how that goes, but now that I know that it works, Mojave owners, if you're looking for some affordable fender flares made out of steel and aluminum fender liners, here it is. I would recommend them. I think they turned out pretty good. Have a great one.